You walk through your front door, and the moment it clicks shut behind you, something in your chest finally loosens.
Finally home.
You weren't mistreated. Nobody said anything cruel to you. You simply spent a few hours around other people, and now your whole body feels like it just set down something heavy. If you know that feeling, you're not damaged, you're not antisocial, and you're definitely not depressed. There's actually a specific wiring in your brain that psychologists are only recently starting to study seriously, and once you understand it, you'll never see your own need for solitude the same way again. For most of your life, you've probably absorbed the same message everyone else has. That being outgoing is the healthy default, that the person with the biggest circle of friends is somehow winning at life, and that if you'd rather spend your Saturday night at home, something in you needs correcting. Classrooms reward the kids who speak up first. Offices promote the people who work the room. Even dating apps quietly punish you for not responding within minutes. So, it's easy to start wondering if maybe everyone else has been right about you all along. But the research tells a completely different story. And before we get into it, you need to set aside everything you've been taught about what normal is supposed to mean. The first thing that sets you apart is that your mind doesn't panic in silence. Back in 2014, a researcher at the University of Virginia named Timothy Wilson ran a strange experiment. He left people alone in a bare room for 15 minutes with absolutely nothing to do except press a button that delivered a small electric shock. Astonishingly, most of the men and a good number of the women chose to shock themselves rather than sit quietly with their own thoughts. For them, physical pain was more bearable than stillness. Now, compare that to how you experience quiet moments. Instead of scrambling for a distraction, your mind settles down and starts wandering into old memories, unfinished thoughts, and ideas that only show up once the noise disappears. Researchers describe this as a heightened capacity for self-reflection, meaning your brain is comfortable turning inward instead of constantly needing something outside itself to feel occupied. That alone puts you in a different category from most people who've never actually experienced their own mind without immediately reaching for a phone. The second trait cuts a little deeper. You don't actually have a smaller amount of social energy than other people. You're simply spending it far more intensely. When you're in a conversation, you're not just hearing words, you're catching the tiny shift in someone's expression, the pause before they answer, the thing they almost said but didn't. That kind of attention burns through mental energy fast. Meanwhile, the person next to you might be coasting through the same conversation the way people scroll past notifications, barely registering any of it. Decades ago, the psychologist Eysenck noticed that people who lean toward solitude typically start from a higher baseline of internal arousal, so extrasocial stimulation doesn't recharge them, it overwhelms them. Picture it like a computer running a dozen background programs at once. It's not that your processor is weak, it's that you're handling far more input than everyone else in the room, so of course you overheat faster. Your small circle isn't a weakness, it's you managing a limited resource wisely. That naturally leads into the third trait, which is that you sense the mood of a room before a single word is spoken. You already know who's upset, who's forcing a smile, and which two people were just arguing, all without anyone telling you. Psychologist Elaine Aron researched this and found that somewhere between 15 and 20% of people carry this kind of heightened emotional sensitivity, meaning your nervous system is essentially picking up frequencies that most people don't register at all. It can feel like a gift, but only up to a point, because absorbing everyone else's emotional static all day eventually drowns out your own. Stepping away into solitude isn't you running from people. It's you turning the volume back down so you can hear your own thoughts again, something most people only learn to do through years of therapy, but that you figured out instinctively as a kid. The fourth trait is one that even people who have it rarely notice in themselves. Your creativity works differently. That moment in the shower when one idea suddenly connects to another, and then a third, until you've built something entirely new in your head that doesn't happen for everyone in that way. Gregory Feist, a researcher at San Jose State, spent years studying creative people across every field and found the one trait that kept showing up wasn't intelligence or raw talent, it was a strong preference for solitary work. Their minds needed quiet in order to make the kind of unexpected connections that produce genuinely original ideas. It's why Tesla avoided group work entirely and credited his best breakthroughs to long solitary walks, and why Kafka did his writing in the dead of night when the rest of the world had gone silent. That wasn't eccentricity, That was the actual mechanism behind their creative output. Every hour you spend by yourself is your mind doing precisely the work it was built to do, even if the people around you insist you should be getting out more. Before the last trait, though, it's worth pausing on something important, because everything so far is only healthy if you're honest with yourself about the reason behind it. Are you choosing solitude because it genuinely restores you and helps your mind think clearly? Or are you retreating into it because closeness feels risky? Because if no one gets close, no one can hurt you. One of those is a preference. The other is a defense mechanism, and from the outside they can look exactly the same. If your alone time feels like freedom, you're in the right place. If it feels more like hiding, that's worth talking through with someone you trust, because the final trait only holds up on solid ground. And that last trait is this: you don't collect people, you carefully select them. You've sat at tables full of chatter where somehow nothing real is being said, and felt yourself mentally check out, not out of rudeness, but because some part of your brain ran the numbers and decided the exchange wasn't worth the energy. Shallow conversation registers to you the way spoiled food registers to your stomach, technically edible, but your system knows better and eventually stops pretending otherwise. That's why your circle stays small, and why you'd choose one real conversation over 20 forgettable ones. The handful of people who made it past that filter are there because you chose them, not because you needed to fill space. Put it all together. A mind that isn't afraid of quiet. An emotional radar tuned to frequencies most people miss. A creative process that only switches on when things go silent. An energy system that refuses to waste itself on noise. And a filter that only lets in what's genuine. That's not a random set of quirks. That's an entirely different operating system for being human. And the real tragedy is that so many people who have all of this spend years thinking they're broken, too sensitive, too picky, too quiet, simply because nobody ever told them this wiring isn't a flaw, it's the design itself. The world will keep celebrating whoever talks the loudest, and people will keep asking why you're so quiet as though quiet were something that needs fixing. But somewhere beneath all of that, you already know something most of them never will. Exactly what your own mind sounds like when everyone else finally goes quiet.